let's dive into what is perhaps one of Brazil's most intriguing cold cases. Foul play, occult practices gone wrong, or even UFOs? Let's dive into it. This is one case with a few spins. Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose were partners in a television and electronics repair business in Campos de Goitacazes, Brazil. Both men, or family men, each being married and had reputations as skilled electronic technicians in their community, even owning a related business. Despite their ordinary professions, Manuel and Miguel harbored intense interests in scientific curiosities and spiritualist practices. They were involved in a local circle that blended electronics with mysticism, sometimes termed scientific spiritualism. For instance, in May 1966, the pair, along with a friend, Elcia Correa Gomez, conducted an experiment on Atafona Beach that resulted in a mysterious explosion, a fireball that lit up the night sky and was heard up to 10 kilometers away. Rumors swirled that a flying saucer had crashed into the ocean, but investigators at the time suspected the incident was man-made. A month later, a homemade device exploded in Manuel's backyard, indicating that the men had been testing some kind of chemical or electronic contraption at home as well. These incidents show a pattern. Manuel and Miguel were experimenting with unknown devices or substances, possibly driven by a mix of technical curiosity and occult ideas, which will make more sense soon. Several accounts from friends and family painted the two technicians as avid believers in spiritism, which at the time was a popular spiritualist movement in Brazil. They frequently held gatherings in their electronics workshop to attempt psychic or paranormal experiments. Elcio, their friend, the same one involved in the previous beach incident, was a devoted spiritist who claimed he could channel spiritual entities, and he had a strong influence on the pair Miguel and Manuel. The group's sessions included discussions of contacting spirits or extraterrestrial beings. In the days leading up to the fateful incident, Manuel confided to a friend that he was going to witness a definitive experiment, after which he would know whether to truly believe in this phenomena or not. But what happened to these two? And what was he talking about? Let's dive into it, starting with a timeline of events, then following the investigation and theories on what happened. When I mention this could be spun in any way, this really is a cold case murder mystery that could have either gone occult or extraterrestrial, or perhaps both. Perhaps one of my favorite stories, as you guys will see. Now going down a brief timeline of events related to the incident on that fateful day. On August 17, 1966, Manuel and Miguel depart their hometown of Campos dos Goitacazes, Rio de Janeiro, under the pretext of buying a used car and electronic parts in Sao Paulo. But in reality, after lying to family members and friends about their true intentions, they traveled by bus to Niterói, arriving around 2:30 p.m. amid rain. They visit an electronics shop, Fluscop, but leave when the components they seek are unavailable. At 2:45 p.m., they purchase 2 waterproof raincoats at another store, appearing agitated as if on a tight schedule. And by approximately 3:15 p.m., the pair stop at a bar near the base of Morro de Vintém Hill, and buy a bottle of mineral water, insisting on a receipt for a bottle deposit refund. A waitress later recalls that one of the men, Miguel, was very nervous and kept checking his watch. The two then head on foot toward Vintém Hill. The following morning, August 18, 1966, a boy hunting birds on Morro de Vintém comes across the 2 bodies. Unsure if the men are asleep or dead, he alerts a nearby police officer. The officer, assuming it might be a prank or drunken sleepers, doesn't immediately investigate. The bodies remain undisturbed on the hillside for the next 2 days. August 20th. On Saturday, another young man hiking the hill in search of a lost kite discovers the 2 corpses and reports it to the Niterói police in the late afternoon. Due to the impending darkness and difficult terrain, police decide to postpone the recovery operation until the next morning. So by August 21st, 1966, in the morning the following day, a team of police officers, firefighters, and reporters ascend Vintém Hill and reach the site. They find the bodies of Monel and Miguel lying on their backs on a bed of cut palm leaves in a small clearing near the summit. Both men are dressed in neat suits covered by new waterproof coats, and each wear lead eye masks. Thick, handmade lead pieces shaped like sunglasses but no eye holes. Literally slabs of metal covering their eyes. The bodies are already in a moderate state of decomposition after several days exposed to the elements. There are no visible injuries or signs of struggle, though traces of blood are observed around the men's nose and mouth. The scene is immediately secured for investigation. So what actually happened, and what were they doing? Now let's mention the investigation and what makes this more interesting. Crude lead-eye masks and some handwritten notes were recovered from the scene. These items were critical clues for what happened that night. Upon recovering the bodies on August 21st, police conducted a thorough search of the scene. Alongside the corpses, investigators found a collection of puzzling items neatly arranged on and around the men. First, there was a notebook with cryptic instructions that gave the timeline of their rendezvous. At 16:30 or 4:30, be at the specified location. Then at 6:30, ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals. Await signal mask. This note, written in Miguel's handwriting, read like a set of ritualistic steps. Interpreting its meaning was challenging due to lack of punctuation, but it clearly indicated that the men planned to take some capsules at 6:30 p.m. and then put on the lead masks after experiencing some effect. The mention of protect metals seems to explain why Miguel's gold watch and a wedding ring were found removed from their person and wrapped in a plastic bag in Miguel's pocket, as if to shield those metal objects from some expected phenomenon. Notably, not stolen, potentially to a ritual or experiment gone bad, pointing to that rather than deliberate killings for money. Other objects at the scene reinforce the ritual notion. An empty 350ml water bottle is found, along with a receipt from the bar it was purchased. Nearby were 2 wet towels, and investigators noted they might have been used on the men's heads or bodies. And in their words, perhaps to counteract effects of heat or radiation. Small aluminum foil cutouts were discovered too, fashioned into makeshift eye cup shapes, possibly used as drinking cups for liquids. Additionally, police recovered bits of cellophane paper embedded with an unknown chemical substance, hinting that the men may have carried doses of some drug or chemical with them. Though, as we'll see in the botched analysis, no analysis of this chemical or item were documented. There were also scribbled notes containing electronic equations and alphanumeric codes. These codes initially baffled detectives, but it was later determined that they corresponded to metal numbers of vacuum tubes and valves for electronics. This is significant, as since one of the leading cases being that this is like some occult ritual, many thought that these scribbles might actually point to a ritual to contact aliens gone wrong, But it was actually kind of funny to see that they were just vacuum tubes and valves, just part numbers. And finally, one stray item was crumpled paper with the word bonsai scrawled on it. Significance, which remains unknown. And to be fair, I think you could say that about any of the items here. Their significance, still unknown. The investigation concluded no signs of struggle. The clearing wasn't disturbed outside of the cut palm leaves that were cut out and spread to be some form of bed where the bodies laid on. But interestingly, the palm leaves were cut neatly, yet no cutting object like a knife was found on the scene. Sadly, once the bodies were finally recovered, there was a series of mishaps in the coroner's office in the Niterói for autopsy. Once the bodies got to their autopsy area, they were already in the elements for a few days. Then, that same day they were recovered, a high-level homicide victim, specifically a detective, arrived. So the medical examiner focused on that body first. They took more priority. So when the medical examiner finally got to Manuel and Miguel's bodies, they weren't even stored properly until later and had decomposed further. Going further, an assistant that undertook the organ removal and basic exam did note internal injuries, but the toxicology tests were never complete. And after that, the organs were reportedly left to preserve in jars on a shelf for far too long and were eventually discarded, since at the time it was determined that the lab didn't have necessary tools to analyze them further. The neglect and how poorly the two bodies were handled, and also all of the mysterious circumstance on why they lied to their families, why they lied to their friends, and what even happened on that hill that night, those circumstances in the case drew so much attention that the federal police and even military intelligence branches got involved. The Army, Navy, and Air Force stepped in, checking if this incident might be connected to broader criminal or national matters. The Navy specifically was interested if this was tied to an earlier event where an unexplained explosion at Tofana Beach happened months earlier was tied to this, though no public or clear link was established. Final details of interest include an eyewitness report mentioning on August 17th, a woman saw a group of other people on the hill, even seeing a jeep with several men go up there climbing it around 5 p.m. Investigators also concluded the mysterious lead masks were made at the victims' workshops, so they made those themselves. Also interesting was that at the workshops, they found occult and technical literature, such as a book titled Life on Mars by psychic author Hercilio Mays, with other related items. What was interesting about that book specifically, though, was that it appeared the book described Martian technology and the possibility in contacting aliens, and notes were clearly taken around these sections, potentially driving some of their experiments. A third-party play might have been at hand. The pair did have around $1,000 on them, yet only $70 was found on the scene. Perhaps they were scammed or robbed? And to close loose ends, of course, their friend, the spiritualist Elcio Correra Gomez, was interrogated as well. He was there for previous experiments such as the previous beach explosion and others. On August 27th, so 10 days after the initial climb, he was held in custody due to suspicions that he did some foul play. However, he denied any involvement and even had alibis where his neighbors did see him working on his car that night. He did admit to being their close friend and a spiritualist, and confirmed those two were interested in meeting benevolent beings. But, according to his story, they also lied to him about their whereabouts, and like their families, he thought they went elsewhere, to some closer electronics shop. He was released and wasn't questioned further. So I threw a lot of different facts at you guys in different orders. It is very weird. Not only was the circumstance weird on top of the hill, why did 3 different branches of the military get involved? How was their friend also not involved? You'd think a spiritualist ritual on top of the hill, maybe some occult fashion gone wrong, had to be tied to their spiritualist friend that was kind of pushing those ideas to them. But he was not involved. So what the heck happened? There are quite a few theories here. I kind of left a lot of those points vague because this case is pretty vague. The main theories were that Elcio Gomez was somehow involved and either sacrificed them in some ritualistic fashion or just wanted to rob them. Either he did it or some unknown third party, such as the men in the Jeep that ascended the hill that night, must have done something. That, or the pair really did get into contact with extraterrestrials and somehow, through their notes from their literature, the interaction might have become fatal. Maybe they did get in contact and it just didn't turn out too well. It was interesting how the explosion at the beach that witnesses claimed to have seen a UFO crash into the waters, and that incident was also investigated by intelligence agencies and the Navy, and those same groups stepped into the case to investigate Miguel Manol's murders. That same explosion that happened at Entalfano Beach had the same groups attracted to this case. That, and the group of men in the Jeep, may have been some sort of part of intelligence group. That, with the mystery light one witness saw on the hill that night, would point to such an idea. Not to mention, other eyewitnesses that night also reported seeing not 1, but 3 mysterious lights over that hill that night. Several witness accounts, many mysterious lights. Going across different witness accounts, some people claim there was 1 mysterious light over the hill, others claim there were 3. This hill actually wasn't too far away from that town, Niterói, so they were able to get a full glimpse on top of the hill. And the final and most likely theory was that the pair most likely did experiment with some substances, as there were mystery chemicals on the site of the incident, and they likely ingested something very harmful that caused the internal injuries that were found. They most likely dived into their occult and UFO studies and experiments a bit too far, and those crazy experiments perhaps finally caught up to them. I didn't dive into what other experiments they ran besides exploding stuff in several locations, but they did conduct previous experiments that included either crazy drugs or chemicals. This case actually goes a bit deeper. There was a 3rd lead mask found much further away from the site. Apparently, reportedly, the autopsy notes had erasures for perhaps some cover-up. And what the two discussed with neighbors and other people before the fateful incident were pretty interesting too. In several accounts, they claimed the purpose of the experiment was to save the planet, or to simply contact other beings. Not to mention future UFO sightings that happened after the event over the same hill, going up to 1968, years later. So again, so many ways you could spin this story. Did the military get involved to cover up some UFOs or some shoddy experiments? Was their spiritualist friend just trying to rob them and get them out of the picture, or sacrifice them? So maybe him or acquaintances got the job done, perhaps the men in the Jeep? Or did they really get into contact with UFOs off their psychic literature notes for extraterrestrials, and that encounter went completely off? It is very hard to tell, and that's why I love this story. A lot of the ambiguity does come from the gross mishaps and handling of the bodies and the case. Like, as already explained, those bodies were pretty well rotted by the time they actually got fully investigated and handled, and it took way too long before they actually took this case seriously. So, with the ambiguity, who knows what actually happened? You'd think, after the nose and mouths were covered in blood, and the fact that they found mystery chemicals, they would have done a thorough toxicology report on the bodies, and apparently, at one point, they considered it, but after deeming their lab, as mentioned before, not suitable for such experiments or such procedures, not experiments, it was really interesting that they just gave up on that. They didn't send them anywhere else. They kept the body parts, and not to mention the weird erasures on like the autopsy reports. Feels like something was covered up. Probably they were trying to cover up the negligence, or perhaps all the military branches that got involved knew something, or perhaps their spiritualist friend had key ties, and maybe he paid some people off. Nobody really knows what happened in this case. All we really know was that the two friends, Miguel and Manuel, did believe in the occult. They were electricians by trade, and they did conduct crazy experiments causing explosions around their area. They did fully believe in the spiritualist movement happening in Brazil at the time, with their friend. So, what even happened up there? What do you guys think? There are many more details to this story too. I suggest you guys take a look at some of the content in the description. Some of those resources would point you down the rabbit hole. And if you guys are interested in this video, maybe I could do a deeper dive. And maybe we could come to our own conclusion. But let's perhaps take a cryptid clue.